In this lecture, we are going to learn about skills and skill sets. Now, in Azure Cognitive Search Indexer, you can use certain skills defined in a skill set, and each skill can enrich the data coming from data source or from the output of other skills. So you can have multiple skills stacked together in a skill set, and each skill's input is the output of the previous skill, and the first one will get the input from the source. So in this way, you can have multiple skills stacked together in a skill set, each performing a certain transformation on the data and giving its output as input to the next one until the last skill is executed and data is stored in an index. So let's go ahead and create a shaper skill to map our nested attribute site ID to the root level index field. Now skills can be of two types. So the one we are going to use, the shaper skill, is an inbuilt skill provided by Azure Cognitive Search Service. Later on we'll see how we can create our own functions and use them as our custom skill. So in our index, we'll have to add another field. I'm going to name it site ID. Let's make it retrievable, filterable, and everything. Let's save it. So we have a new field called site ID, and what we want to do is map our nested site underscore ID field to site ID in our indexer runs using a shaper skill. So I'm going to my skill sets, add a new skill set. Now we need to create certain skills here, right? Now I can pick one of the templates from here. So these are some of the custom skills. So once we will have a function, we will use custom web API skill with Azure function. But right now I just want to use a shaper skill, which is under here, under util. Just pick this. I'm going to copy it and paste it here. Now I'm going to just name it flatten site ID because that's what we are doing. Now context is a level at which the operation takes place, right? And it starts with the document, which is our root, and then we have fields, right? And we know that our site ID is under fields attribute. Now under this fields attribute, we know that our input is site underscore ID and source will be site underscore ID. Now you can name it anything. I'm just keeping the same name here. And output will be the target name. So I want to just name it site ID. So this is your input, and your skill will look for your input field at this context level and map it back to this level. So the output will be mapped back to /document/fields/site ID, right? So this is our simple skill, and this is a shaper skill. Now there are a lot of inbuilt skills that are available that you can use here. Some of them are vision skills, some of simple conditional skill. So let's say you want to create a new output field based on the local area. If it's downtown, you can output a different field value. If it is Riley Park, you can have a different value for that new field based on the condition. Similarly, you have a lot of text-based field. You can split your strings. You can have translation services to different language. You can detect sentiment. You can even detect the language that's coming in and get the output, the language, to a field. So these are some of the inbuilt skills. So our skill is ready. I'm going to save it. We'll remember the site ID and the path here. So this will create a skill set with just one skill in it. Now we can go back to indexer, and inside our indexer, if we go to skill set name, we need to copy, let's copy the name of the skill set. Go back to indexer. And I'm going to copy the name here. Right. So now when my indexer runs, it will run each row coming from my data source, send it to this skill set. Let me save it. And my skill set will execute one by one. If we have more than one skill set, each one will execute, taking the input from the previous one. So right now we just have one, so my skill set will take input from my data source and gives an output. Now we need to map that output in our output field mapping so that it can be saved to our target field we created in our index, which was site ID. Now, so inside my output field mapping, this will be a new object here. Let me clear this. And in here I need to give the source field name, and also I will have to give the target field name. Now we know that the target field name is the new field that we created in our index, which is site ID, and the source field name will be the output of our skill set. So if you go back to my skill set, our context was document/fields. So I'm going to copy the context and then the output field name. That's it. So we have a skill set which takes an input from our data source, gives an output at this location, and then we map it to our target field name. I'm going to save it. Now again we have a new field added, so I'm going to reset my indexer and run it once again. Let's go to execution history. Now because we have a skill set in place, it's taking much longer time than it took without it. But still, our documents are indexed. We have about 194 warnings. So if you want to check the warnings here, we can go here, and so we're getting a lot of flattened site ID warnings, skill set. Okay, language parsing, but these are warnings, so we can ignore these. Let's go back to our index and see if our new field has been populated, which was site ID. Search Explorer, going to just search the whole data, and there we go, we have site ID. So let's improve our results a little bit. So we're mapping our output to SID, but we need to pick just a site ID, right, under SID output. So let's go to our indexer here, and I'm going to just put site underscore ID. That's a field we need to map under SID output, because there could be multiple output fields under SID in our skill set here, because this is an array. Let's save it. Again, we will have to reset our field and run it once again. Now let's go back to our index and check our site ID field if it has been mapped properly. I'm going to just run a whole search, and this time we are able to pick the values properly from our output path. So in this way you can use your skill set and skills to transform your data, flatten your data, or do one of these available inbuilt skills to get results as per your requirement. So that's it for this lecture, and in the next lecture we are going to start building a custom skill, a custom web API skill, and we are going to use Azure function to achieve that. Thank you, and I'll see you in the next one.